Paulo,
1, 2,
Paulo,
3, 4.
Hilfe,
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
The law of war, also known as international humanitarian law, is a component of international law that dictates the conditions under which countries can go to war, as well as the way in which warfare can be conducted. So why does this matter to the everyday soldier? Well, individual soldiers are not the ones who decide whether or not our country goes to war. They are the ones who are responsible for actions during conflict and must abide by the principles of jus in bello, which is Latin for justice in war. The two main tenets of jus in bello are discrimination and proportionality. This means that there are laws that dictate who can be legitimate targets during war, and laws that dictate how much force is appropriate. So why do soldiers need to be well versed in and abide by the law of war? Well, I believe there are three main reasons, and that first main reason is accountability. Now, I know the phrase law of war seems like a bit of an oxymoron. After all, war is a life and death scenario, and who would abide by a certain set of rules when their life is on the line? However, if you don't hold yourself accountable to the law of war, then you let yourself become susceptible to the savagery of war.
There's a beast in every man, and it stirs when you put a sword in his hand.
More importantly, you need to hold yourself accountable to the laws of war so that you can hold your peers and your leaders accountable to them as well. During war, emotions are high, and sometimes hatred, or misplaced blame, or simply not thinking clearly can lead to decisions that are truly heinous. The old adage of, "I was just following orders," isn't going to cut it. If you witness something that goes against the law of war, and you don't do anything to stop it, then you too are responsible for the damage. The law of war is what we use to hold ourselves and others accountable in order to prevent that inner beast from coming out. The second reason why I believe it is important for soldiers to know and abide by the laws of war is because of the idea of reciprocity. And the logic behind this is that if we don't uphold these values ourselves, then who else will? If we don't reflect these principles within our everyday practices, then it is no longer a norm that other countries will also follow. If we hope that our adversaries will not target our civilians, and that they will treat US prisoners of war humanely, and that they will use appropriate levels of force, then in return, that is how we must treat them. Even if our enemies don't treat us this way, this is still a standard that we need to uphold, because to do otherwise would signal to the world that ignoring these laws and norms is okay. It can be easy to forget the humanity of our enemies, so always understand that enemy combatants are in the same position as you, just on the opposite side. And finally, my third point is basic humanity. We can try to justify going to war for all the different reasons in the world, but if the means by which we achieve that end aren't virtuous, then is the war in itself really virtuous at all either? The US military holds itself to a high standard in all aspects, and that does not stop with the way we conduct ourselves during war. The mantra of by any means necessary is not something we go by. Instead, we accomplish our missions with means that are aligned with international law. As soldiers, you must embed the law of war into your heads now so that this doesn't happen later.
The news of that American soldier accused of putting on his night vision goggles and then methodically going door to door, killing children and families in their homes in Afghanistan.
Brigadier General Janice Karpinski ran the U.S. prisons in Iraq after the invasion. Demoted after the Abu Ghraib scandal, she said the torture carried out there was not a few soldiers disobeying orders, but many soldiers obeying orders.
The consequences and backlash that these soldiers received are not what should deter you from violating the laws of war. Instead, you should be deterred by the immorality of these actions themselves. War is hell, but that does not mean we need to lose our humanity.